Today's project, actually technically today's second project of the day, I got a 2015 Ford Transit 250 single rear wheels. It's not a dually, but it's a bigger unit, as you can see, big old rack body type of thing, and they ran it a little too long, went metal to metal. So today's deal is going to be pads and rotors. That's really all I want to do, but there's a little bit more to this job, which is the reason I figured I would make the video. As you can see, this is not a normal looking rotor setup. So the rotor is trapped by the hub, and then the hub is bolted, and these bolts are kind of special. They're torque to yield bolts, which some people would say one-time use, but that's only like a half truth. So the parts needed will be the rotor, and as soon as a rotor looks like that, you know the job's not going to be typical. And then the pad set, and yes, I do have the new clips. And then in this case, I needed these bolts. So having done, and it comes with an O-ring as part of the kit. Having done a lot of stuff like this before, I want to give you a little explanation on the bolts. These bolts, you'll notice there's a shoulder right there, like it's kind of thin right here. These bolts are made to go, not just to be torqued where the torque wrench clicks, but we're actually going to exceed that, where this bolt is, all bolts stretch, but this bolt is going to stretch into the yield phase. So that means it's stretching. The elastic phase occurs on all bolts. We're going past the elastic phase, and we're going to stretch this to the point where it's yielding. In other words, it's permanently damaging the bolt. So that's why one-time use is kind of true. Sometimes if you take the old bolts out, they'll give you a spec to measure right here. They'll actually have you measure right there. Because think, if this bolt gets longer, it's actually going to get thinner. So they may give you a minimum thickness right here. That was not provided on this one, but I have seen that from other manufacturers. So the short answer on this one is one-time use bolts. So I'm gonna get this thing jammed apart here, and I'll show you how it goes. All right, here on the back side, I've got to loosen this. It's strange looking. It's got a weight hanging on there. A lot of times that's for vibration. So you really got no option but to wrench that one off. Still not a real big deal. And then the bottom, again, not a real big deal. A bit more here. And then, you know, I kind of like to keep neat. So I'm using this drain pan that you can't quite see, but you would have seen a minute ago. Not just for brake dust, but in a minute, we're going to have to pull this hub apart. And there's going to be gear oil from the rear axle, rear differential, you may say. Okay, parts and pieces. I'm going to fold that caliper out of the way. It hangs really good by the parking brake cable, so don't think I'm messing it up. There's the problem. Those I actually should probably just throw in the trash. Interesting note, these pads have an inner and an outer. So the one with this weird mark right here, that's the inner. And then next I need to get the whole entire bracket loose. Those are quite a bit tighter. So I'm going to change over from a wrench to a ratchet. Standard, probably don't really need a video for this one. They're pretty tight. I have to get them both loose first. This one. Ooh. Got it. what 80 something foot-pounds feels like. So, get this bracket off. It's a mess. I'm going to spend some time cleaning this bracket. Also, fun fact, these ones are moving better. I actually did the other side first, and the guide pins on the other side were stiff and binding. When I pulled it apart, the last brake job was done with white lithium grease right there, and that's a no-no. So whoever did the brake work prior to me caused premature wear on that other side. That other side was totally metal to metal as well. So probably good in the back. Let me bring you around to the front. So this is where this job gets a little special. I'm going to take a few paper towels, make a nice thick square here, because I'm about to pull that axle out and need a clean spot to set it. These axle, or they're hub bolts actually. So on the back side, by the way, 13 on the caliper bolts, the small ones, 15 on the bracket bolts, the big ones. And I do have torque specs we'll go over later. So I need to pull these 5 now. If you don't have an impact gun, go ahead and loosen these first with the parking brake applied. That's a good way to do it. So these are those torque to yield bolts. We're going to call them a one-time use. Now I'm not really judging you if you use them more than once. I've certainly done more than enough of that myself, but this van hauls a lot of weight, and I don't really, who am I to really go against the manufacturer's recommendations? So I'm going to go ahead and follow them. And they really weren't that much money. So I really don't see any reason to reuse them. If you can plan this out, just get the bolts. That's what you're supposed to do. Next step, I'm going to pull this hub. When I do that, some gear oil is going to come out. Right there. No sweat. I also just smack that rotor rearward. I'm sorry if you're East Coast and you're dealing with a lot of rust. I don't do that anymore. So my rotor's going to come off easy here because we pay the government more money in the state of California. That apparently is why. Okay. And taxes and stuff. So I'm sliding this whole axle tube out, this axle out of the tube, and then if you check right here, there is a seal that I've got, that O-ring. We're going to change that. I'm setting it on that little paper towel I told you, my cheater paper towel. And then right here I was tripped out on my first one, so I had to reference some service info. All we really need to do, get this rotor moving good, and then rotate it so the pieces line up. Come on, sweetheart. Okay, right there. No problem. That one's clearly ready for the trash. And then I've got quite a bit of cleanup to do. So we're gonna try to clean this, you know, because it went metal to metal, it's got a lot of dust and little metal stuff. I'm gonna keep that away from the bearing. And I'm not going to make it airborne. It's not really a great idea to go get the blowgun and blast this stuff right now, but I'll be breathing it in. So I'm not going to do that. Okay, and the face of this hub I definitely want to keep clean too. A lot of junky dust and yucky stuff here. Change over. Now, if this bearing gets you nervous or you know that you got some junk in there, by all means, rinse it out with gear oil. We have no reason to service that bearing. The bearing is lubed in gear oil as the differential rotates, so we don't have to pack it or add grease or anything. If you saw a little bit of oil drop out, that might come up to like less than a half a cap full of brake clean. So technically, I should climb in there and pop the differential fill plug, which is on the it's on the driver's side over there, the left side of the differential. I could pop that loose and just make sure it's topped off, but I'm pretty confident I'm going to be good. I may check that a little bit later. I want to focus on the brakes, really. So I'm going to clean this rotor up. And then I'm going to swing the rotor in place, and I got quite a bit of other work to do. I'm just going to focus on the sides. Slip in there. Okay, I'm going to turn it a little. You could stay there for now. That caliper bracket is going to need some prep. So I'm going to bring it over to my bench where I've got the new clips. Get it all cleaned up, lubed up. And then the other part that is a little tough on this job, this has a twist-in piston, which is very common if it's got an integrated parking brake. But these are a little special. On the driver's side, it spins in clockwise. On the passenger side, it actually spins in counterclockwise. You'll notice this arrow. That means we're turning this counterclockwise to compress it. My go-to tool is this $10 cube. And I've done a lot of jobs with this cube. But these ones are freaking tough. You got to push really hard and at the same time turn, and I got pretty worn out doing the other side, so I'm going to recommend that you get the piston retraction tool, but you can't get the one that only turns clockwise. You have to get one that you can actually rotate counterclockwise. So I don't have a real good recommendation with a part number or anything. I will show you that I can do it with this, the cheapest way, but you're going to have quite a bit of arm strength to do that. So I think first, let me get this caliper bracket prepped. I actually had a change of heart. I was about to prep that bracket and I realized, you know, there's no real reason why I can't get this axle back in and just get the bolts started. So I'm cleaning up right here where it sits. I just need to make sure that there's going to be a clean mounting point, and then I need to use a little pocket screwdriver to peel this O-ring off. That O-ring is now trash. The new O-ring came in that Dorman kit that I showed you. And then for me, I'm just going to use, there's plenty of gear oil over here. I'm going to coat this O-ring in gear oil. Slide the O-ring on. Stretch it into place. Make sure I got a good amount of lube. If you'd like, you could grease this if you're nervous about the O-ring. But it looks pretty good to me. And now, I'll flip you around and get this baby back in, because there's no real reason for me to just let this thing sit here and drip. So, change of heart, like I said. Grabbing a clean paper towel, because I'm going to guide this axle in with a clean paper towel on it. Alright, it's like this. Okay, and then I'm going to wipe up some of this oil, but it's not really a big deal. Pry down like this to get it to engage the side gear of the differential. And now that I'm there, I'm going to turn this so the bolts line up. These bolts are brand new. And get them all started. I'd recommend you don't dip these, or try not to get any damage on these threads or oil, because that'll all affect the amount of stretch they get, because you're varying the friction. work this in here nice and easy. Let's see, I just had to turn the rotor to line that up. Alright, they're just touching, and I'm going to leave them like that for now, because there's a torque procedure that we have to follow on that. So let's get that area cleaned up a little bit. And now, back to my plan of cleaning the caliper bracket. Let's go get that done. Alright, so I checked this caliper out. It's actually, it doesn't even really need to be wire brushed. It's already actually pretty clean. So first thing I'm going to do is pop these out. Yeah, these ones were white lithium or something too. I can see a little residue of white in there. A little residue of white on here, right at the base. So that's a no-go. Clean that stuff off there. And then the go-to for me is 3M silicone paste. They do have disc brake caliper lube. That is made to work with the rubber that's inside of this bracket right here. So I'll do a plunge. Yeah, moving much better and way better than the other side. The other side I had to really work at getting those out. This one's a little tougher. Okay, that's why. So the white lithium, or really any petroleum-based grease actually, will swell this seal right here. And so, and also there's a couple O-rings. There's an O-ring in this one and an O-ring in the other one. It wasn't terrible, but sometimes it'll bind them right up. So it'll be way nicer now. Now, if you don't want to do this, don't do it. Slam it back together. The brake pads won't last as long because they'll be dragging. There's almost no force generated by the system to return the brake pads. It's just a slightly deformed O-ring in the caliper. It's actually the caliper piston seal. These clips make my job easier. So I'm just gonna line it up so I can keep track of what I got here. Match it up. Looking good. Clip it on. Now I'll make a point, because I do understand a lot of places get a lot of rust right here. So I'm going to take this one off. Right here, right where my finger is, that area can get extensive amounts of rust. That would be the point to clean up. Use a wire brush, you know, that type of thing. These ones are really clean already. They're already ready for the clip. And so gotta make sure I get the right one here. Looks like this one. Used to strip them all off, but now it makes more sense to me to do one at a time. Make sure I get them sitting good. I don't mix them up. Yeah, see, still it's just clean. So the reason that we need to do that, if the brake pads, you know, if you look at it like this, if this one is raised up a little and this one is pushed, both of them are kind of squeezed in, it's going to squeeze on the brake pad and the brake pad's not going to be able to float. It's also premature brake wear. Oops. A little too rough with that edge. I knocked that clip off. Okay. Not really a big deal. And then I got a lot of mixed opinions to put a little bit of grease on these points or not. I'd say the difference is negligible. The grease is good until it collects dust, and then the grease is dirty and it's bad. So whichever one you want to do, not a real big thing. So this bracket's basically ready to go with just minimal work. If you're in a rusty area, I'm sorry, you can spend probably 20 minutes on this. All right, next part of the job, and actually what I found to be the most difficult, to be honest with you, is the caliper go down a little lower, and because because this is the tool I've got, I have to do this in a way that is more difficult than it should be. But can make it work. So on this cube, there are all these adapters, little pegs. I found that these two work the best for that. And remember that arrow says counterclockwise. So I got it ratchet set up to loosen basically. Now I'm gonna turn and I'm gonna push hard, like pretty much. I'm a big boy and I'm pushing hard on this, pretty much hard as I can. Right, and there's no point in twisting if you can't push at the same time. All right, and if that boot starts to get twisted, you can spray the edge where the boot meets the piston. This one's moving good. So just gotta push and twist. Push and twist. Ooh. Okay. Other thing that I've got that I wish would work is a piston compressor. But all this does is pump outward. So that won't help. But they make the tool that will expand like that at the same time as having a shaft that goes through and allowing you to turn that. That tool is the money. You can get them for like 50 bucks. If I could pay 50 bucks and have it here right now, I'd pay the 50 bucks. But I'm going to knock this job out. I'm not going to have it take 2 days. And for me to try to go to a place that's, well, first off, I don't believe that Harbor Freight carries a product that will allow you to turn counterclockwise. I could be wrong. So I'll probably try to get it from like ATD or something. Mine. You're talking days for me. So I'm just going to get them like this. So I can twist, but it's hard to push. I need to take a minute here. Twist and push. Alright, that thing is so exhausting. Oh, it's ridiculous. Let me get on hanging this caliper bracket. Should be pretty familiar with that. Jump you back here. And the light. Okay, so no biggie, just snugging these up. Okay, those caliper brackets are 85 foot-pounds. 85. Okay, next step, pads. No biggie. Same, we could have a whole discussion about lubing these spots, but it's not a very clear debate as to which one's better. Alright, check this out. Note, there's a little kind of stud here, but it's overall smooth. In the back, I'll point something out. This stud right here, that needs to sit in one of those grooves. So all I'm really saying is this caliper piston needs to be like a 12 and 6, those little slots. So I'm out of breath from pushing that caliper back in. They suck. The next thing I could do, if it'll work, is going to be to get that caliper on, but I suspect it's probably not pushed back quite enough yet. Not yet. It's not far from it, but unfortunately I've got to keep twisting that back in. So I'm trying to catch my breath from that. And that's why I was saying it'd be worth getting the tool if you can plan this job ahead a little bit more than I could. Maybe doing a little cheating. Felt like sometimes if I push with this for a couple seconds, help push the fluid back through. don't know. Damn. Oh my goodness, that's exhausting, let me tell you. But I'm pretty sure I should just barely have enough room. So I'll swing this up. Tried a few times, just a little too tight still, previous times. As you can see, I think it's just barely gonna sneak. So the hardest part about that job is compressing the piston, I think, if you don't have the right tool. And then, see these guide pins? You need to make sure it's sitting right. Tough to do that. Let me get the light over here. Tough to see it, I should say. It's very easy to do. So we're just gonna try to push this in. Maybe you have to lift it up just a hair. Do it one-handed, and we're in there. And as you'll remember, that was the big weird one. So let me set the camera up back here. Alright, spinning that one up. This one, the bottom, and by the way, these, they actually probably call for Loctite, but I've never had any problems. The torque spec on these is going to be 23 foot-pounds. Every torque spec I'll give you will be in foot-pounds. Pound-feet, if you'd like. I'm getting a little bit up on this bottom one. Alright, so I'm going to give you a couple of options here. One torque them exactly the way you're supposed to. But I'm gonna propose I'm gonna show you a little bit of an issue with that. Okay, you can see this one, you can't put a socket on it. So how are you gonna torque it? You'd have to torque it with a crow's foot. And if you torque it with a crow's foot, you're changing the effective length of the torque wrench. So you'd actually have to do a little calculation. You know, if it's calling for 23 and you torque it with a crow's foot, you may only have to go to 21 or 20. But for me, I'm just gonna wrench that. I probably just did 30 right there, but that's a little bit of muscle memory for me because I do this type of stuff a lot. So, torque those to spec in whatever way you see fit. That's kind of standard. This is a little special. So, first round on these is 35 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna turn my torque wrench back on, and I gotta come way down to 35. I knocked you over. 35. All right. One, two, three, four, 5. All right, next, and this is a weird part. On this wrench, on this torque wrench, I can do units. I need 70 degrees for that. Okay. I have to lay it down. Yeah, it's still setting up. Okay. It takes the wrench sometimes a little bit, but see now I got a 70 degrees. So I'm gonna start here again, star pattern. Check this out. All right, I've gone. Oh, that wasn't quite enough. I took it off there. I actually screwed that up. Okay. There we go. That was to 70. Next one. No, I'm sorry, that wasn't. Okay, that was to 70. Good. And that was actually 159 Newton meters. So I can save you a little trouble. Do 150. Sorry, 150, basically just 150 Newton meters is exactly what I got with that. Okay, so here we go on the second one. Let's see how I do this. I'm at like 30, 38, at 63. Okay, that was to 70. That was 154. So you're probably pretty solid if you want to do Newton meters. 150, more or less. I'm gonna keep going though. Okay, got that one. Yeah, 152. Not yet, almost. Okay. Yeah, that one was probably a little over 157. Clear it. Some new one now. Alright, didn't get it yet. This is smart enough where I can ratchet back. And that way I'm spoiled. Ooh, I just barely got it right there. Okay, let me break that down for you. When you go to do this job, the 35 is the base torque. The additional 70 degrees is what's stretching the bolt. So you could do a couple things here. If you made a mark here, here would be 180. Half that would be 90. Bringing this point up and making a mark, and then moving this point to that mark right there would be 60. So if you want to do some marking, you could get this pretty close to the 70 degrees. The only reason I would probably suggest that over just shooting the 150 Newton meters is once that bolt's starting to stretch, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's getting tighter, so it may not make the torque wrench click or hit the 150 Newton meters. It may it may just kind of continue to keep stretching. So this is a better fastener for engineers because the stretch is the clamping force, and the stretch is actually more accurate in degrees than foot-pounds. But let me crunch the numbers on for this real quick. All right, so this is my way of cheating. If I change units, I could actually only get up to about 135 Newton meters. 135 Newton meters is 100 foot-pounds. So I'd probably go with like 110, 120 foot-pounds. If you'd like, go ahead and do the math. I'm not going to stop and totally do the math, but I'll probably say 120 foot-pounds is pretty close to the calculation, but it's not as accurate as the degrees. You should probably do that. Now with this, I can do a little bit more cleanup. These are torqued in the way that I would do it with the wrench. The big caliper bolts are torqued properly. These are torqued properly. The wheel's ready to go back on. You can see without the tool for retracting the caliper, this job is going to take some sweat. But if you had the tool, it's not really a bad job. You just follow the steps, no big deal.